This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
In 5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
Thanks to Rode Microphones and Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of the Portabooth Pro. This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast with Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. From LA, George the Tech Whittam, the tech to the VO stars. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy. And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite podcast. Once again joined by one of our favourite guests, Bobby Owsinski. How are you, Bobby?
Very well. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, guys, for having me.
It's always a pleasure. I've got to say, I was listening to your latest podcast only 2 days ago where you were talking with Miles Copeland, of course, Stuart Copeland's brother and the manager of the police. And there was an interesting interview on your Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle. Check it out. But there was one thing that popped up that I thought, wow, that is really interesting. And you tapped on something called voice stealing. So there's some kind of technology that enables the voice to be stolen. Is that correct?
Well, it's not stolen so much. It's deep-faked. So it's using machine learning and a huge library in order to fake not only a voice, but also lyrics and music by your favorite artist. And they've done, 100 of them. They're different artists of all types. As a matter of fact, I'm just looking here at what they call the jukebox. And there's, Billy Ray Cyrus, Alan Jackson, Kanye West, B.B. King, Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
Yeah.
You name it. Who's who?
Yeah. Katy Perry.
Big names in there.
It's pretty amazing, actually. Now, if you go and listen to this, you find that some of them are pretty good and some are not. But most of the time when they're not, now again, this is one of these things where it's AI that's trying to reproduce the whole experience. So it's music and it's lyrics, it's making up lyrics as if it were the artist in the style of the artist as well as the artist's voice. In many cases, the mix is really off. So the vocal is kind of buried and it's distorted a lot of times. So, this has a ways to go.
So there's a website where you can go there and you can just read infinitely all kinds of stuff. It just puts sentences up at you. And every time it just keeps on learning your voice more and more and more and more. And then eventually you can just type whatever you want and it's you, not you saying it.
That's Google's Magenta project.
Aha, yeah.
And it will do a number of different things. It will make music. You can type. Actually, all you have to do is put in a melody that you make and then say, I want it classical, I want it country, I want it whatever. And it will do a full arrangement. And it's pretty amazing what it will do.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It makes music and art using machine learning. So it's taking machine learning and just seeing where you can push it.
There are plenty of these.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's one I'm looking at here. It's called Ampere music, and this is where everything else is pretty experimental. This is not. This is one of these things that you can buy if you want something that's create your own music in seconds. But if you do a search, just do deepfake audio, deepfake music, deepfake artists, you'll get dozens of these. So it's a technology that's beginning to explode.
Oh, yeah.
Again, how good it is relative. It's good enough that you can go, wow, that's cool. Is it good enough to be usable? Not yet.
No, not quite yet, but
close.
But that just means time.
Well, this is interesting tie-in here, right? So, Bobby, you teach for Lynda, right?
Yeah.
And Lynda's parent company is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a learning page called linkedin.com/learning, which is that now Lynda, or is that merging with Lynda, or?
Well, it's merged quite a while ago. Now, instead of calling lynda.com, it is in certain places, but it's LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah, so there's one on there that I stumbled on. It's so interesting, the timing of our conversation, because I've just been obsessed with this the last 2 days. there's a section on their site called Understanding the Impact of Deepfake Videos. It's a 48-minute long presentation, and it goes into, all the stuff. And, it's very fascinating. And, of course, all the implications. And, we're talking about the context of music, but the real scary thing about it is it starts to allow there to be plausible deniability. Like say a certain president can say, I'm not really sure that I actually said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it goes the other way. That's right. And the thing is like, it's not okay, you can't get away with the whole thing, but what you can definitely get away with is a few subtle changes.
Right.
And it totally changes the meaning of what somebody actually said. And a little cut to B-roll or whatever you want to do.
Check out the Nixon video where the Nixon's basically mourning the loss of 2 of our astronauts on the moon mission.
Right, never happened.
Never happened.
I mean the moon mission.
Right. But I mean,
just so we're all
made in this presentation on LinkedIn, there's a video where they show Nixon giving the speech, the one that everybody saw on television, talking about the moon mission, but it's been re-edited, and he's basically... they're basically mourning the loss of Buzz Aldrin. And it's him, and he's saying the words, and you're watching him say it, and it's not true.
What if this whole time, parallel universes are possible, and this whole cloning thing is just really parallel universes popping through into our universe?
Whoa. You need a new
I'll
dealer.
have what you're having. I need an escape from the day I've had. Holy cow.
Yeah, exactly. But what I find interesting about this, though, is when we're talking about the actual theft of a voice, because I think one thing you did mention, Bobby, was that there is actually no way of someone going and saying, that's my voice, you now have to pay me.
There's no legal precedent so far. There's some thought that, considering the way copyright and plagiarism lawsuits have gone, that there may be a certain, and I'm thinking especially the Marvin Gaye, Alan Thicke case in 2015, where it was just the feel of the music rather than the actual music.
Yeah. I ran into that too.
So,
just that styles can be copyrighted or owned.
Well, they can't be owned so much, but the court can rule in your favor because of that. And there's some thought that this could fall under that. So a deep-faked voice may fall under that, but no one knows yet because it's too early.
Are there any parallels with picture?
I believe there is, but again, I don't know of any cases so far.
Because in commercials, for example, like often they'll have somebody act like somebody, and they got to say celebrity voices impersonated. So there is some level of owning up to it,
Does that mean if someone who's starting to become a voice actor and has the same tone and sound in their voice as Andrew, let's say, for example.
Impossible.
What does that mean for them? Does that mean they can't be a voice actor because they sound too much like Andrew Peters?
I don't think that's the case. I think it's more to do with, if you talk about style, but I think this is probably a bit more blatant than that. I think the fact is that with all this new technology and AI is that, and I've flagged this so many times over the years, saying we should be able to license our voice. So you get like a library, like you would with a music library. And if someone wants to use your voice and they use AI, then they have to buy, they have to license and make a payment.
But take the AI out of the equation, and I've been in the audio industry here in Australia for 32, 33 years. There's always been, when you book a voice, there's always been the option to book a character fee and have that voiceover artist impersonate someone else. Now, no money goes to the person that they're impersonating. And the only thing that changes from what we're talking about to that is the fact that you're putting a computer in the middle to generate the voice. So personally, I don't see that there is any theft. It's always been there. You've always been able to do a character of someone, and whether you have to acknowledge that or not in the, let's call them credits in the commercial, is irrelevant. I don't know. Can you own your own voice? I don't know that you can.
Can you own your own likeness then? And there, I believe there's got to be some precedent there. You can't.
Well, yeah, you
voice is
can. I mean, that's the case with like Michael Jackson's estate owns his likeness.
I think there's got to be, like, it might take a court case to push it through, but at some point you have to own your likeness. And I think it's a different thing if someone sounds like Andrew, but if a computer sounds like Andrew, then that is constructed. I guess the gray area of what if someone is just parametrically messing with knob in a voice simulator and comes across the Andrew preset without having ever heard Andrew.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I sit on the fence because I obviously work with plenty of voiceover artists, and I understand that you want to protect your income. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know that, because no one's, unless they're actually out there going, this is Andrew Peters, they're programming, hi, this is Andrew Peters, come and buy our margarine. I don't know. I don't know that there's any infringement.
I just find that the industry in general is reactive and is very rarely proactive. And this is the issue, that we get down the road and all of a sudden this thing has been looming for ages and everyone's discussing, but no one's doing anything about it, becomes a reality. And then it's all of a sudden reacting to something that's already happening. And it makes it very difficult to have any control once it's out the bag.
I mean, you can't control it. Like the only thing you can do is be reactive, actually, because if not, you're kind of a conspiracy theorist, paranoid person.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. I think the other issue is too, unless you are a celebrity, then if someone takes Andrew's voice sample and puts it to air in, I don't know, in Malaysia, how's Andrew ever going to know? You know what I mean? Like,
you have to catch them.
How do you police all this? If you're going to go, okay, here's the ruling that everybody owns their own voice. Okay, that's great, but how the hell do you police it?
You have to have the finances to enforce your own copyright or your own whatever it is.
Yeah.
But wait, there is another way to look at this. Don't forget, this is a machine learning problem. So the closer the deep fake can be relies on how much data is input, which means it would have to basically get everything that Andrew ever did, because the more that was input, the closer it would be, the output would be. Otherwise, there'd be glitches and it just wouldn't be the same. So if that's the case, that would mean that it's learning off of a copyright or a likeness, and that might be the precedent right there.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get towards. It's like we voluntarily give our voice to this business. Someone buys a license and it becomes like a library of voices that people can choose from. But at least you get paid.
Right, but the thing there is, like I said, what if such an engine exists, someone's going to break it down into formant and this and that, and then what's stopping them from going like, I'm not going to pay anybody. I'm going to turn a few knobs until I come up with a non-existent voice that I like.
Well, speaking about the engine, if you go to openai.com, which is where I was telling you where all these songs are in their jukebox, they give you the source code. So it is open. It's free.
Wow.
By making it free to all, that it won't be used for evil because anybody can use it. So why nobody has an advantage over anybody else because it's available to all?
No, it's an academic research project.
Yeah.
So they're not thinking at all commercially.
Yeah, of course not. Now, I mean, when you say precedent, now I know we don't have precedent for this exactly, but don't we have precedent in terms of samples and music?
13 seconds.
I remember the Queen one, right? Under Pressure for the Vanilla Ice song. That's probably the most famous one I can think of.
Yeah. Like...
Yeah, it's dun 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 dun. See, I added a note. But I mean, to me that's the closest thing there is I can think of for precedent. But this is far more difficult to, I guess, prove. Is that the problem?
I don't know. I mean, for me, the question is: do you own?
Yeah.
Do you really own your voice?
Would imply that you're violating, or you're somehow are stealing. It's like.
But here's the thing: if you took this to trial, then you would have to prove to the jury, actually either way, that either, no, it doesn't sound like Andrew in this case, or yes, it does. It sounds just like it. And then you have to have a jury decide that one way or the other.
So if some guy's in court and the guy's like, "I've never heard Andrew," and then your lawyer's like, "You're telling me you've never heard a CNA broadcast? You live in Dubai, don't you?" And you catch the guy in a lie being like, "Oh, I guess I did hear his voice."
Yeah, but you get that in songs all the time for plagiarism, where someone will say, "I never heard that song," even though it sounds exactly like it, or very much like it, and for the most part, they lose every time.
Right. You can't prove that you didn't. What's that? You can't prove a negative.
How many different ways can you rearrange 1, 4, 5, 1?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we need more chords.
Oh, man.
So,
yeah.
I was going to say, Bobby, how do you think this is all going to play out, this deep fake? Can you see it looking pretty bad in the future?
Well, not in the near future. I mean, if you go and listen to some of these, the best one is a Frank Sinatra one, where he's singing a Christmas song, and it's in the style, and even the lyrics are sort of Christmassy. And it sounds like him, but it doesn't. There are inflections that you go, oh, okay, that's not quite. So when you go and listen to these things, you see that it's a ways off. Now, how fast can they improve on it? I don't know. Because again, this is all down to how many sources of input do they have. With Frank Sinatra, for instance, it's kind of finite. They said that they put 1.2 million different pieces in as source material. Now, but that's not just Sinatra, that's everything, But, again, it's just finite.
Actually, within the deepfake itself, it would know or possibly know what data it pulled from to create, if you said, "Hey, deepfake, I want whatever, like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby crossed," and then those would be the two inputs, and Frank Sinatra's estate is like, "Aha, you programmatically put me into it."
No, again, there's a couple ways to look at this. If it's machine learning, which most of this is, then it really depends upon how much input they're getting. On the other hand, if it's artificial intelligence, that's figuring it out for itself. So if that's the case, it would be able to take just one piece of Andrew and then derive that. But the problem is, artificial intelligence, it doesn't work the way everybody thinks, and it's not as good as everybody thinks right now. So that's why I think this is a little ways down the road. Now, in 10 years, it might be a different story, 5 years even. But I think we got, a little bit of time at least before we get to that
Although
point.
Is that it?
Oh, there you go.
But this is much better than that.
Yeah.
Sounds really weird.
It does sound weird.
Let me ask you a question. Is that Frank Sinatra or Michael Bublé?
Well, everyone can have their creative influences.
Good point.
If you asked my parents who you just played,
Right.
my mother would probably go, well, it could be Frank Sinatra, it could be Michael Bublé. So where do you draw the line? How do you figure that bit out?
It's a clever attorneys.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy, they're rubbing their hands together.
Totally.
But there's this other technology. In fact, I was talking about it this morning with my wife, and she works for the Traffic Accident Commission, and she's involved with all their commercials and all the marcons and stuff. But they were looking at using this technology for a campaign, which was used in the UK by the UK police. And what they did, they got a kid who had been killed in a car crash, and they rebuilt that dead child talking about how he died.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really freaky stuff.
Does that cross the line?
Well, I'm guessing they had his parents' permission, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the fact is they can do it, So you kind of, we're probably further down the road than we maybe
and just
we
like the
think
whole
we are.
technology
I
was
don't know.
originally derived from a kid who wanted to call into school and call himself in absent as if he's his parents.
Well, it all started with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, didn't it? With the recording of him snoring in his bedroom.
Yes, with the emu.
damn movies.
The $5,000 sampler. Like every kid has one of those in the 80s, right?
That's right, exactly.
His friend's dad had a pretty nice Ferrari too.
That's
so
right.
the sampler was nothing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Oh my gosh.
Save Ferris, by the way.
Safe there.
I believe.
Well, I think there's some interesting times ahead, at least by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, like if the machine can work out the rhythms and the nuances and everything about someone's voice, which they're doing, then where is it going to end up? Who would know?
I just hope that computational power becomes and stays in pace with the machine learning that's computationally able to decode the fakes.
Yeah.
As long as we can, and compute. I mean, look at the new Apple M1. I'm just looking for a chance to drop that in there.
Because you're looking at one. That's right.
Hey, I bought one. I have one.
I'm looking at the John Hardy M1, and I like it.
Yeah, that's good too.
That's one of my favorites.
You look at it's a fantastic piece. You look at that computer is so light years ahead of everything else that's currently on the market in terms of a traditional PC, and that just happened sort of almost overnight, to at least to us.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And that's just going to accelerate in terms of development and just get better and better and better and just outpace everything from Intel and everybody else really quickly. And that's a consumer product. So we're going to develop, Moore's Law, whatever says we're going to double everything all the time. So as long as we have the tools to decode it or find it or sniff it out, we'll be okay, right? Right?
I wonder what the markings of that would be.
Right.
What would you look at in order to determine whether it's real or not?
I mean, I haven't looked at I haven't taken, say, one of those SoundCloud recordings. I'm checking out the OpenAI site for the first time. It'd be interesting to grab one of those, download it or re-record it into my DAW and then start looking at the waveform and seeing what kind of weird, anomalies. Maybe load it into a spectral view editor like in Adobe Audition or something and take a close look and see what kind of there's got to be anomalies, like weird harmonics and funky stuff that's going on that could be matched up against the real thing. And it'd be like a fingerprint. Like a fingerprint would be left behind,
It would always have the same reverb to it.
Right.
If you try to put a room onto it, it's either going to be like so dead, or even that, part of the deep fake is like faking it in the environment that it doesn't exist in. Maybe there'd be even something that's not part of the voice that you can key onto.
True. And an artifact. It's going to be about the artifacts. The artifacts will get smaller and smaller and more minuscule and less noticeable to the human hearing, but those artifacts will remain infinitely.
And then the question is, can you mask them out? So even if the artifacts exist, if you put it into a heavy mix with a whole bunch of other stuff, and then there's too much data to hear the artifacts.
Well, that's what's sort of happening now. If you listen, just sample a bunch of those samples in the jukebox, and you'll hear that many times the vocal is mixed way, way down. So you get the feel of who the artist is supposed to be, but much of the nuances are masked.
Yeah,
right.
It's not Frank on his own mic in front of the orchestra, right?
Yeah,
yeah. They're trying to hide the errors, basically, or not hide them, but
mask them.
Mask them. If it's farther back in the mix, you can't hear the whatever. I mean, some of the early examples of the voice synthesis was definitely very MP3 sounding. And every time on YouTube right now, when you hear some fake announcer computer, there's a lot of scripts, a lot of videos out there now that are obviously just fully done with a computer voice.
Oh yeah. There's an advertiser on YouTube that, how when an advertisement gets in your YouTube sort of queue, and you can't not see it. I watch YouTube on the TV a lot at night. I like watching YouTube, and there was one advertiser, and I will not name them here, but the ad was for computerized speech software, and it was incredibly cheap, and it was so that any of you out there making your own YouTube video can have natural human sounding narration. And they're saying, of course, this commercial is being voiced by this computer right now. But you didn't know that, did you? And you're like, well, yeah, I did. Because I'm a human, and I know what humans sound like. I'm not another computer. But, but that was the whole ad. And I watched that ad probably, 15 times.
Yeah.
And it made me crazy. knowing that this is so cheap and being, advertised on YouTube far and wide to millions of viewers. And if that's happening today, man, what products are going to be available for pennies in the next 5 years? It's going to be mind-boggling.
Would the average punter have picked that voice, do you think?
I bet not. I bet most people would have picked it out, but a lot of them you would have had to have asked them before they would have questioned it.
Right. Like if they were listening to it out of context or just listening to it in the background, they never would have said a word. And then until you called attention to it, and then you'd say, oh, yeah, there's something weird about the pacing or something.
Yep.
That is where we're at. And the same is for sampled instruments. And, the sample libraries are mind-boggling now. And the guys that program sampled instruments and drums are really good now too. So you could be fooled very easily unless you're listening for it and you're a musician. Then you're like, there's something there to it. But
it's like the old drummer's joke. How many drummers does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
None. You just get a machine to do it.
Ouch.
But that's an interesting one. Why do drummers still exist when every single sound of a drum is now captured on a computer?
I'll tell you one reason why. It is, with a good drummer, you're like, hey, something like this, and they do it, and it's more annoying to go sifting through a bunch of drum patterns in a drum machine trying to find something.
It's more efficient.
I think it's like...
Well, but there's a feel factor, and it's the same thing with the voiceover actor, where you're getting the feel and the nuances and things that's going to be the tough part, I think, for any kind of deep fake in the future.
It's the human factor.
And people...
That's right.
Human factor is incredibly hard to replace. Blade Runner, and all that. It's incredibly hard. So and there's always going to, because so many people are so scared of this technology, of course, taking their voiceover careers away. And I think it's going to replace a lot of the really low paying gigs.
It will definitely. All the phone voice IVR, all that stuff is just like dead in the water at some point, and it's not actually that far away.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually the weak point is this. Andrew, how much inane direction have you received over the years that you are becoming the interpreter, and maybe the AI isn't even the real power of the AI isn't in generating the voice, but it's in trying to receive direction from. Imagine a producer giving direction to a computer.
Well, it'd be interesting because I think that's probably where the computer falls over, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's actually the weak point.
Yeah.
Like it's more work to get a good read out of a computer than you, and that's amazing.
It's extremely easy to get a read out of the computer, right? You just type it in.
Garbage in.
But to direct it and get what you're really looking for, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where
and that's
real acting and a real drummer and a real trumpet player and all those things. That's the difference. Now, if you had a trumpet player playing a digital trumpet, programming the sound of a real trumpet in synthesis, who was a really good trumpet player and really good at synthesis, they might be able to fool you because they're trumpet players. I don't know about that, and why would you do that anyway? But
sure.
Well, no, actually, that's something that's been done for a long time. I can remember doing sessions back in, the late 90s, where we'd bring in a real drummer to program the drum machine. Because the drummer would know the nuances and would know, I would do this here.
I've seen that a number of times. I actually recorded a live album, and the whole organ was played by a guitarist on a guitar synth. And I remember going into the gig going like, oh my God, are you serious? And I left going, that guy really knew how to voice the chords and play it. So the organ sound was fine. You can kind of fake a B3 pretty well these days. But he pulled it off with a guitar with the voicings. And he also did the same thing actually with horns. And it was like a band with a keyboard player playing whatever, like if we just have drums, bass, guitar, and everything else is a keyboard player. And this band was drums, bass, guitar, and everything else was the other guitarist. And he was as good at it. And I also met another guy when I used to sell equipment, and he would sell keyboards, and his knack was to pull up any patch, and he knew how to play that keyboard and make it sound like a hammered dulcimer, because the hammered dulcimer sound wasn't that hard to recreate, but playing it like the instrument and that's what he was good at. He was good at like all the patches. He just knew how to play them and make them sound like what they were supposed to, instead of playing a hammered dulcimer like it's a piano.
Yeah, I saw something years ago that I don't know if he's still working for the production, but there was a good time there where the guy that did the Foley for Simpsons cartoon, he used a guitar to trigger this Foley.
To the footsteps. I remember that, yes.
Yeah, he used a guitar because that was the instrument. That was his instrument.
It's just an input. Yeah,
it's an input, right? So what does that mean? So now we can... I don't know where to go with it.
You can set Andrew out to pasture, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
We're getting retirement age anyway, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes, today is a significant day of closer to retirement. It's
I look at voice actors all the time that are younger, closer to my generation or younger, and the ones that are doing well because they're just so damn efficient. That's one reason. Mm-hmm. They're certainly they're fine at what they do, their craft. But they're incredibly fast learners, incredibly efficient, and pretty affordable. And then the other outliers are just people who happen to be actors, that land a really big gig, and then they have a mini career.
I think some of them are able to take like sometimes it's literally this, not a good voice, but a unique voice and the ability to take direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
I have a client who, she says, I hardly book a gig. It's like maybe once or twice a year, but they still send me in because I have this crazy voice and I get booked once in a while for this cartoon. And she has one of those voices, and she's a Hollywood actor. And she was like, now I have to have a home studio to audition for 2 jobs a year, but I have to have one. So what am I going to do? I was like, wow.
So Marge Simpson, do you?
Not Marge, but someone that has that. She had that kind of voice, right? That really super distinctive, niche voice.
Like whoever plays Marge Simpson will be suing hers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
I'm only imitating Marge Simpson because that was the voice in my head, of course, from Simpsons. But
I thought you were doing her sisters, but yeah.
No, you had the 2 sisters, right? Yeah, the ones on the Simpsons that certainly have the most job security are the ones that do 7 or 8 voices, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to wrap this up, right? I'm trying to find a way to wrap this up.
Well, it's interesting.
I guess the question we started with was, can you copyright a voice? I think we've probably decided that we can. But I think that opens a whole nother...
take precedent.
Yeah, but that opens a whole nother bag of worms, really, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
And there's also the other thing which we didn't touch on is that when you've done a job and they've said, can we use this in perpetuity, and they'll pay you a premium fee to keep all the bits and pieces you've sent.
Yeah.
And now they can use that however they want, and you've got no recourse.
And what about this? I have changed words many times, like whatever, people reading 18, it's supposed to be 19. I can't tell you how many times I have put someone else's voice in the middle of another voice actor's read to fix something because they won't, no time, whatever billion reasons why, won't call that actor back up and re-record the script, which really should have been a thing, right? That should have been a fee or whatever. And it's like, so now we have like me as syllables and changing numbers. It's usually very often numbers, actually. And is that right, or is that okay?
Well, I've done it to you, Robert. As I've mentioned before.
Have you really?
I've replaced half words of yours. Yeah. Where it's either been cut or gated or something's gone pear-shaped. So I've...
Because I was in a train doing a podcast.
So I put the at the end or a... But,
Here, let me play you guys something. Ready?
Smithers, I think we have a solution to our problem. The place to test our new mini nuke should be the Source Elements headquarters in Chicago. Let's find out their coordinates. Grab the gazetteer.
Mr. Burns.
Very nice.
Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah. And his sister Carpet.
That's right. Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to play that into some AI infinitely and see what I get out of it.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably also thank Bobby for joining us.
I think we should.
But at the same time, we should also ask, was it really Bobby?
Yeah, I like it.
Well, thanks for having me again, guys. I appreciate it.
This show was mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. Edit by Andrew Peters. Using Rode microphones and Source Connect Now. Tech support from George the Tech Whittam. And supported by Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com. The home of the Portabooth Pro.
You look for trouble.